welcome. This is going to be on the water with the Steez CT SV TW. I'm going to be casting a variety of lures. I got like jigs, all the way up to like crankbait, stuff like that. I'll probably go up to like an ounce and go down to like an 1/8 ounce with this rod. This is the K2 714. And I also brought my custom St. Croix Legend Elite Light. So I'll be doing some lighter lures there, try to get down to about a 1/16 of an ounce. Keep in mind I have 10-pound line on here, so that's gonna be a limiting factor. First lure on here is going to be it's a 1/4 ounce Strike King structure jig with a Z-Man crawler on there, a trailer on there. It's probably gonna be, I don't know, maybe close to like 3/8 of an ounce. So let's get that whipping around. So when I first test out a reel, something I do, I just put it all the way up to 20, or the max brakes. I know it's gonna be way over braked right now, but that's just what I do, and then I walk the brakes down. Yeah, it's super over braked. The wind's slightly at my back too, so that's gonna help. I'm just gonna kick him down to like 12 right now. Yeah, this is gonna have no problem with this lure, which I didn't think it would. I know some people on the Tackle Tour forums, they're talking about casting like a 1/16 ounce head with a trailer too for like crappie. So I don't think this is gonna have any problems. Yeah, there's no fluff up or anything. It does cast out pretty flat. It could be because of the wind too, but I know it's probably a combination of that really small spool with the T-wing as well that just makes it go through effortless. Okay, I'm gonna kick it down to 8. This is probably about where I'm gonna have it right here. So I'll do a test cast real quick on 8. Yeah, no problem at all. And what I was talking about in that first video with all the specs, you can go check that out. It's my Steez CT. It says in English on it. I'll have that link below. But I'll try to get close so you could see what I was talking about with the T-wing. The angle on the side of the spool, that's what the big with that 30mm spool, that's what that's gonna do. So I'll whip that out there, try to get close for you guys. And that line guide was over here, and you could tell it came out smooth. The retrieve is really smooth too. I know I got a jig on, but even when I whip it in there, you don't really hear like that winding sound that you normally hear on higher speed gear ratios, or even lower gear ratios at that. So it's put together pretty solid. See, I cast it up there and I just let it drop. See, now it's the lure been hitting the water, and that's on 8, so that's not like it's like all the way braked. Now I'll try for max distance now. I just put the brakes down to 6. Let me reel this in real quick. And the inches per turn, when I was talking about in that first video, I'm actually really surprised. It still picks up line pretty quick. It doesn't dig into the spool as much as I thought it would. So that's me just letting the lure already hit the water. And that's on 6. So that's not like I'm over braking it. I didn't see how far that one went, but now I'll just cast one out there for distance. And keep in mind, this is probably total weight. Probably like, I don't know, 3/8 of an ounce maybe. I didn't weigh it, but you can get an idea. I don't know, that probably went like 40 yards. And I'm trying to take advantage of the wind too by casting it higher, but it's not that, it's like barely more than halfway into the spool. So I'll show you in a different video, but on Daiwa's SV spools, they actually mark the halfway point with a little line on the inside edge of the spool. So that's how you know, like when they give you 2 different numbers on the spool, they gotta say like it holds 80 meters, like 40 meters dash 80 meters, a 10-pound line. That means 40 meters is gonna be that line that's inside the spool. So if you want to do like half braid, and then you only want, let's say, 40 meters of 10-pound, fill it up with braid or whatever backing you're going to use with the up to that line, and then the rest of it, when you get up to the edge, it'll be about 40 meters of line. All right, now it's time to test out the retrieve and also the drag on here. This is a Rapala DT10. It's probably about a ½ ounce. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but it should be able to cast out there a decent ways. And also I could test that retrieve and that drag. That's a big thing I'm going to test out. So I just left the brake setting at 6 because I know this is going to fly. That was fairly long cast just for whipping it out there. I got about, I don't know, 40 meters or so out there. Yeah, that thing's smooth. This is an 8.1 gear ratio. I'm not saying it's the most powerful reel out there. I know I'm used to like cranking with like my Antares, which is a 5.6 and has a 102mm handle on there. Basically everything for power. But it's smooth under retrieve for sure. Like I was dragging the bottom there a little bit on with this crankbait, and it was very smooth. See, that's a long cast. I don't know how far that is. That's probably 45 yards or so. See, I have braid backing on there, but I still got a lot of room left on there. Yeah, it's past the midway point for sure. But now I'll try to grind this down there. I'm going to turn the drag all the way up. Yeah, I'm hitting bottom. Yeah. And that thing, it's smooth. I mean, I could tell that the reel wants a little bit more power to do this, but that's not what it was made for. There's a 6.3 gear ratio if cranking is what you're doing. I personally wouldn't get a reel like this for cranking, but you know, people got a whole bunch of different preferences. All right, now I'll whip one out there and I'm going to test the drag out. I'm going to pull it a few times with the drag. Yeah, that just flies out there. Like that line, it tracks really good coming off the spool. And also when it's winding back on, it lays really flat, which is nice. Okay, let me actually I'm going to try to dig the line into the spool if I can. Yeah, it's doing good. Okay, I'm going to loosen the drag up a little bit more than that. That's that sound. It comes out, I think it's kind of a useless feature, but it does come out smooth. This isn't really the best way to test the drag, but it's smooth and predictable. It doesn't just jump in there like into the drag. All right, this is a Rapala X-Wrap. I think it's an 11 size. This is the river perch color. One of my favorite jerk baits. And also I throw a lot of jerk baits in the springtime. So let's test this out. I think the total weight on this is like just under a ½ ounce. Yeah, I have a slight wind up my back. I don't think it's enough to really say it's going to help my cast a whole bunch. But it's it casts out there pretty freaking good. Now what I'm doing with this jerk bait, I'm going to put the camera down a little bit. What I'm seeing is how the line is going to stack up on the spool. So sometimes if your line doesn't really lay right with a jerk bait, because like when you're jerking the rod like this and you're picking up slack line, I'm going to see how the line management is on this reel, which it seems like it's been really good so far with that narrow spool. I was going to jerk a little bit, purpose to get like some slack line up on there. A couple of casts on there. If I get a fish, it's gonna be nuts. I actually had, when I got my Antares this a couple of years ago, I came down here and I was throwing around some different baits. I was testing out the low and high end of that reel, and I was throwing a Senko with like a 1/8 ounce, I think it was a 16th ounce like wacky jig, and I had a huge pike flare up on it, but it missed it. Like I was definitely taken off surprise. Like so when pike come up, like the gills flare out kind of like a bass, but a little bit more extreme. That thing was big for sure. It looked like a freaking gator coming up. Yeah, I haven't had any problems. My line is stacked up evenly. Oh, let's see how I had the reel down like this, and I was twitching, purposely picking up slack line, and it's pretty even all the way across. I can tell it's like not as tight as like when I was pulling in that crankbait,
which is to be expected, but it feels even all the way across. Because sometimes if your line guide doesn't really track that well, or if like your line guide is a little bit wider, like see how this is more narrow, like at the actual line collection point right there. What that does, that allows you, it's truer tracking for your line going back and forth, versus like one that is a little bit wider to compensate for casting. Your line's gonna be like looser going back on there, so it can kind of stack up to one side, especially if you're down like working top waters or jerk baits. I did a couple times, I was purposely working it real sloppy, and it's pretty good on there. So let me do some short casts to see if anything. Well, I actually cast short cast really nice. Wow. Yeah, there's one little loop right there, but that's not like detrimental. Like it's not gonna burn when I'm casting. I guess that's another thing too. When you're casting and you like just any reel and you have fluorocarbon, don't try to cast that backlash. So you can see like sometimes you have like loose lines. Don't do that, because if the more it hits, like it'll hit down here like on your reel foot or wherever else the spool's near, it'll actually burn your fluorocarbon a little bit, and it creates a weak point. So if you have a backlash that's kind of like a bigger loop, just let your line out. Don't try to cast it out like you could with braid, because you'll burn your line. All right, this is a 4-inch worm. It's like a zoom worm. I think it was Gander Mountain brand maybe, but either way, it's a 4-inch worm, nothing fancy with it, with a 16th ounce shaky head on there. This is probably gonna be around the lowest end I'll throw with this setup. Anything lighter than that, I got that Power BFS setup, if you've seen that video, with the 2012 Aldebaran BFS, and using like 15-pound braid on there. So let's test this out. Now what I'm gonna do, see, I'm getting a lighter territory, I'm gonna turn the brakes up to 12. And like I said before in that other video, I always set my reel to barely have any side-to-side play. The zero adjuster knob right here, it is adjustable, it just takes a little bit more force. It's so you don't accidentally hit it and stuff. Daiwa says it's set from the factory. I myself like a slightly, just barely loose spool, and then I just use the brakes to compensate. It helps for pitching and stuff like that. Oh, I'm used to casting that heavier jerkbait. It could be a little bit overpowered. I'll turn it down to I'll turn it to 9. Yeah, I could definitely tell it's not the reel for sure. Like the rod probably doesn't really want to load up unless I just start whipping it, but see how the casting is still pretty low arc. Sometimes what can happen when you get lures that are too light for your rod, it'll kind of arc forward more. Like, I know it's kind of odd, but this isn't happening. There's no fluff ups or nothing like that. I mean, to be expected, because the brakes are at 9. And remember, I was at 6 and that wasn't happening. Still, I mean, still use your thumb and stuff like that, but it's nice to have that safety. And keep in mind, this is stock bearings as well. 10-pound fluorocarbon. All right, now I'm gonna give her a couple of rips. Okay, see how the line was arcing up? I think there's a little bit of a crosswind coming off the shore, but even with that crosswind, it still controlled the line very well. Now just for kicks, I'm gonna do a few pitches with this. It actually pitches pretty nice. I mean, I'm not pushing it out there too far, but it's pitching it very nice, even with that crosswind. All right, this is a head-on Zera puppy. It's a lighter topwater bait. It doesn't have any of the fancy weight transfers, nothing like that. So this is really going to test the awkward casting of baits, those baits that like to tumble in the air. So let's get that out. I forgot to adjust my brakes, but still did it okay. I'm not really gonna walk it back. I could actually probably turn my brakes down a little bit. Yeah, I'll turn it to like, yeah, I'll try 7, why not? Oh, that cast out there, even with that arc it had on there, because I kind of pushed it up, it did fine. All right, this is gonna test the high end. This is a weighted swim bait. It's a power bait weighted swim bait. This rod shouldn't be casting this, so I'll do it lightly, but we can at least see how the reel handles really heavy weights. Yeah, that looks sketchy. I don't know. I mean, the power feels good, but I couldn't really whip it out there because the rod is the rod's definitely screaming for help at this point. But I was making sure my drag's set just in case a fish does come, but this is huge. I mean, the brakes are working, but I'm gonna need a bigger rod to test that out for sure. This is a Rapala Rip and Wrap number 6. This should test its long range capabilities without overloading the rod. Still a decent amount. I'd say on that cast probably about 40 yards without really whipping it out there. I can't tell. Definitely a functional distance for sure. But yeah, I wouldn't say this is just like a one-trick pony as far as casting. I think the biggest thing if you're using bigger line is going to be your line capacity. But if you run like a 15 or 20 pound braid, you're not going to have any problems with line capacity. That's probably about the same distance. This lure overloads the rod, and given the fragile nature of the Phoenix K2, I really don't want to overload it and then have it break, and it'd be my fault and I won't get a warranty at all. So not looking to overload the rod. Now I'll try some mid-range casting just to see how it handles, because some reels can how would I put that? Some reels can be really good long distance casters, but their brakes aren't that well for short distance. So let me try some out like that. Yeah, it's a little fast. I think it's the lure, but the spool is a little bit fast for shallow stuff with this bigger lures like this, which isn't bad. I didn't feel the line fluffing up at all. It's just fast. So you just have to make sure if you're using jigs or anything else, you want a soft presentation, just to use your thumb and raise your rod tip a little bit. Yeah, it's really really low trajectory. Like I said before about the wind, you don't have to worry about the wind taking your lure as much. And there's also this less distance that you have to compensate for. Yeah, I mean, that's really nice for short range stuff. All right, now I got the Steez CT SV TW loaded up onto a St. Croix Legend Elite Light. This rod's rated down to a 1/16 of an ounce. I have a 1.8 gram jig head on there with a 2-inch ripple shad body, so it's fairly finesse. I'm gonna work down from there, but let's get to it. All right, so I'm gonna turn my brakes up. This is that light jig. I'm gonna turn it up just about 14. Keep in mind this is 10-pound line, so you would not be using this line for this. Oh, brakes are way too high. Way too high. So with your lighter lures, when your brakes are really high, kind of like what I went over in that how to cast BFS lures, your bait's gonna kind of hang up in the air. I mean, it's still casting okay. I think I have to turn the brakes down a little bit more. This is a fairly light lure too. I should have started out with something a little heavier, but yeah, there's no fluff or nothing like that. I did have to turn the brakes down to 7. I could probably squeeze it out to 6. I still got a little bit of that wind at my back, not very much. It's mainly coming across me now. Getting a little bit of bow in the line, but the brakes picked it up pretty nicely. And it's getting, I don't know what to say. Maybe like 17 yards or so. Yeah, just whipping it out there, I mean, it goes for sure. I think if I had lighter line, it would be a lot better, or even just some braid. The reel is definitely capable for sure. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little whip out there. It's still getting decent, probably about 20 yards or so. And I'm going to switch to something slightly heavier, just because I do have 10-pound line. But again, you can look at it. It's 1.8 gram jig head with a skirt on there and a 2-inch ripple shad body. So that's your typical crappie lure right there. Maybe on the heavy side for bluegill, but it's crappie capable.
All right, as you can see, it's a very capable caster. This video got cut short a little bit because I ran out of battery on my camera, which that's my fault. I didn't charge it back up. But as we saw, it's a very capable caster. Got down to about that 1.8 gram head with the ripple shad. That's probably about a 1/16 of an ounce total, probably a little bit more. But all the way up to that swim bait, which the rod was a limiting factor, but when I was casting it out there, it didn't feel like the brakes weren't working, because sometimes your reel could actually, like, the brakes just don't work anymore, kind of like a BFS reel. If you're casting too heavy of stuff, it just doesn't really work. I didn't feel that way with the Steez CT SV TW. I don't know, I really like casting it, especially pitching. I will be getting out skipping. That's one thing I did forget to do for you guys. But on my next video, the actual on the water, I will be making sure I get to skipping and get into some fish as well, really test out the drag and get to real world applications. You can only get so much from casting, like, in a Lake Superior or wherever you're going to be test casting. But make sure you subscribe and comment below. Does mean a lot, and also I get to kind of learn what you guys are looking for and stuff like that. And I post on Instagram. That's another thing. You're going to get more updates on Instagram versus hitting the notification bell, which I still encourage you to do. But Instagram, I always post kind of before I post a video and then after I post a video as well. So that's going to be your best bet. My Instagram would be down below as well. So thanks for watching.